Hello everybody, in this video we're going to look at more iteration and in particular the while. Alright, let's get going. So iterations are loops. This is a term that's super important for the APCSP exam. Again, iteration is a loop. So here are some iterations we've learned before. If you want to repeat a certain amount of times, you'll use for variable in range. If you want to loop over items in a list, you'll use for item in list. If you want to loop over characters in a string, you'll use for character in string. If you want to generate numbers in a loop, you'll use for variable in, and then with the start, the end, and possibly the step. And if you want to loop until something is done, you'll use the while. And that's the one we're going to learn about now. Here is the syntax for the while. The command is a while. After the while, there's going to be a Boolean expression, and you run the code inside the while until that Boolean expression is false. End of the line, you have a colon. And inside the while, or indented, that's what you're going to run until that Boolean expression is false. If you've previously learned Scratch, it's very similar to repeat until. It's just that in Python, you're repeating until something is false, and in Scratch, you repeat until something is true. All right, so here are some examples of while in action. Remember, with the while, we're going to keep on repeating as long as that Boolean right after the while is true. So the first example I'm going to do is a number guessing game. Say the computer picks a number to be 6. I will initialize my guess to be 0, and here's my while. So as long as guess is not equal to the number, I'm going to keep on repeating. So here's the game part, and let's try it. So again, the idea here is I'm going to keep on asking the question. It's going to keep on looping, keep on repeating until number is equal to the guess. Right here, my guess will be equal to the number, and because of that, the Boolean expression is false. And when it's false, the repeat will stop. All right, for this next example, I'm going to make a program that says hi to you. And I'm going to use a Boolean flag to determine whether to keep going. So I'll make that flag now. It's a Boolean variable. And as long as this is true, I'll keep repeating. So let's try this out. So as long as I keep on typing things that are not quit, it's always going to do the else part of this code. But as soon as I type quit, it will do the if part of the code, which will set keep going to false. Now the Boolean expression is false and the repeats stop. The last example I'm going to show is a classic example when people are making APCSP create tasks, and that is the best of 7. A best of 7 simulation when one team is a lot better than the other. So one team will win 70% of the time, and the other team will win 30% of the time. So here I coded up a best of 7. In my first simulation, team 1 wins 4-1. Again, team 1 wins 4-1. Team 1 wins 4-3. Team 2 wins 4-3. So if you think of this in terms of the real world, as long as both teams have under 4 games, we are going to keep on playing. And that's what this while does. As long as team 1 wins is less than 4, and team 2 wins is less than 4, that Boolean will be true. And if that Boolean is true, we're going to do the loop. Common mistakes. There are 2 types of common mistakes. The first has to do with the while and getting it to work. And the second is knowing when to use the while. So first, getting the while itself to work. Of course, you might mess up the colon at the end, but by now, usually this is a little bit less common. All the time you'll see it with ifs and stuff like that. But again, once you get to the while, it's a little bit less common. What people will mess up on, though, is messing up the Boolean expression. So they'll mess up the sign of the greater than equal than. So they'll put and instead of or. They'll have trouble with greater than or equal to or just greater than plain. So those kind of things all the time. So all the time, you'll see mistakes in the Boolean expressions. If the mistake is not inside the Boolean expression, sometimes you'll see a mistake within the code of the while. That is this stuff right here. And the condition that you need the Boolean expression to satisfy never happens. So for example, I could do something like this, where team 1's win totals never go up. So I would never meet this part of the condition where team 1 wins. And so team 1 could get 6 wins, and you'd never win the best of 7 series. Now, when this happens, there's no magic trick to finding it, but one thing that could help is to print out your variables. So in this example here, I'm printing out the number of wins team 1 has, and the number of wins team 2 has. So I can watch, are team 1's wins increasing as I think they should? Are team 2's wins increasing as they think they should? And these are the kinds of things that can help me tell if the error is in the while part of the code or if it's in the Boolean expression. For example, if this printout never ever happens, then I know I'm not running the code at all. This part of the code, the Boolean expression, is never true, and so I probably have a bug there. Alright, and the other type of mistake is more of a stylistic mistake, and that is when you should be using a for instead of a while. So usage-wise, you can usually interchange fors and whiles, but with respect to code readability and avoiding errors, they are not really interchangeable. Almost always, if you can use a for, the for is better. So let's see them side by side fight. So here's my first example, repeating while versus for. These codes do exactly the same thing. They repeat 10 times, but the one on the left with a while gets screwed up in a lot of different ways. You can forget to initialize the counter. You can mess up the sign. Is it less than? Is it greater than? Is it less than or equal to? And most common of all for beginners is you mess up this counter and you forget to increment it. So again, all these ways to screw this up. If you're going to repeat, just use for variable in range. You pretty much have exactly the same problems if you're trying to generate numbers with all the same places to mess up. So again, if you're trying to generate numbers, use a for with the start, end, and the step. Another one is looping over items in a list. There's so many ways to mess this up. You can mess up the index, mess up the sign of the Boolean. Is it less than? Is it greater than? Is it greater than or less than or equal to? You have to think about how to use len. Is it len or len minus 1? When you finally get the item, you have to think list bracket index, which is not intuitive at all. And finally, the mother of all mess ups is forgetting to increment your index. So many ways to mess this up. It's so much easier just to use for item in list, and that is what you should do. So again, don't use a while if you're going over individual items in a list. And finally, you might say, well, Dr. Wu, what if I need the particular item, or what if I need the index that I'm on? And in that case, Python has something called enumerate, which will give you the index that you're on. There is no reason to use a while, which will lead us down the road of many potential mistakes. Okay, here are the solutions to the lab. So this first problem here is a very classic example of how the while works. We're going to use a flag that's going to be either true or false to determine whether or not to keep on looping. So if we want the loop to happen, we need the Boolean expression after the while to be true. I'm going to set this to be true. I'm going to set this to be while keep looping. But don't forget, I need the colon. And let's try this out. I'll keep on giving responses up until the time I say no, or n. And when I say n, the if clause here will activate, keep looping will be false, and the loop will end. The repeat will end. And again, this is a very classic way of doing whiles. Next one, while debugging 1. So it's a debug. I'll try to run it. And when I try to run it, you see it kind of loops and I can't see what's going on, but it never ends. So something here must be wrong. So what's going on here? I have a number and a guess and a difference. And what I say is, as long as the difference is less than a certain amount, I'm going to converge towards my number by taking the average number between my guess and the true number and seeing if that's less than some difference. So this error here is a classic error, and that the error is in the Boolean expression right here. And so the way I have it set up now is I'm going to loop if the difference is very small. But actually, I want this to be the other way around. I need to loop if the difference is big. So let's try that out now. And you can see we slowly converge to my correct number. Now I'm going to put it back to what it was and just show you how you might try to debug something like this. So what I've done is I've put a print inside the while. So I know that if the while loops at least once, it should print. But when I click run, nothing prints. So this is a hint to me that something is wrong with my Boolean expression because the loop never happens. So again, the main thing I want to point out here is sometimes that loop won't happen because your Boolean expression is wrong. And when that happens, or when you suspect that happens, try a print inside your while, and that will indicate whether the loop ran or not. Okay, next one, while debugging 2. So last time we saw that sometimes your bug will be in here, your Boolean expression, but sometimes your bug will be in here. And so let's see that now. So in this one, my number is 99999, and this is a classic number guessing game. So I'm going to try to guess my number, and it's supposed to give me only 5 guesses. So let's see if that actually happens. And it never happens. See, it never happens. I get infinite guesses. But if I happen to guess the correct number, it does end as I expect it will. So something is wrong here, and that this condition right here is never being met. Well, what could it be? And here's your hint, some bug, missing code here. you'll see that every time I guess, my guess count is not going up. So let's fix that right now. And let's try it one more time. 2, 3, 4, 5. And when I guess 5 times incorrectly, it prints out at the end, you did not guess the number, which is what I expect. So as far as how I'm going to see this without just magically seeing it, again, one of the things I might try to do is do prints. So I'm going to print out correct, and then I'm going to print out guess count. So let's run it. And when you see what I ran, I did a cancel there at the very end, by the way, because this interface won't actually end. But when I print out correct is always false, and that's what I expect because I never typed in the right number. But the guess count always stays at 0, and that's not what I expect. So when that's not what I expect, then I know that's where my bug is. And again, this is another classic type of error that you'll see with whiles.